I think of depression as not being just one thing. What we call depression comes in many different shapes and sizes. I categorize it in three ways. I think of there being an anxious depression, which I believe is the most common by far. Probably 80% of people with depression have what I call an anxious depression. The second category, much less common, is an agitated depression. And then the third category, which is increasingly common, is a sluggish or lethargic depression. I believe those represent different problems within the brain. The anxious depression, most common one, is very likely an imbalance in serotonin. Generally, that's a deficiency, or the serotonin system is not working properly. I think the most common reasons for that, probably the most common reason, is stress, chronic, unrelenting stress where people do not get a break from it. But also diet and lack of movement, lack of exercise have a very big role in the onset and perpetuation of that. The second category, the agitated depression, I believe involves an imbalance between serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin generally is calming, dopamine generally is stimulating or activating. And if you have an imbalance where there's not enough serotonin to keep one calm, and there's too much excess dopamine causing inner agitation, hostility, anger, irritability, that's a very uncomfortable state. The third category, the sluggish, lethargic depression, I believe involves too little dopamine. There's a deficiency. Dopamine and norepinephrine are very closely related brain chemical. Then there's not enough to keep one energized, focused, motivated, so that people become just tired, run out, and that can be an effect of long-term depression. Also very commonly of seasonal depression. If someone has had high levels of stress chronically over many months or years even, eventually the body becomes depleted, so that the chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, they just aren't there in sufficient amounts. Then it becomes very, very hard to get out of it because you don't even have the initiative left to get going. There are ways, though, of getting that moving again, both nutritionally and in terms of lifestyle changes and choices that I think can really be helpful at getting a person started. And then the real key with all types of depression and anxiety, the real key concept is to find the few practices or lifestyle changes that really fit with you and your body and stick with them. Stick with them for a year and you'll feel dramatically different. And then if you can hold on to some of them over the course of your life, you can prevent this from coming back again. Very often people do shift from one to another. It'll start off with a single pattern, for example, the anxious depression. Most people who get depressed or anxious, it begins under times of great stress or just after a time of great stress. That's the most common starting point. But if it's not dealt with successfully, if people don't fully recover from that initial episode, it will very often divert into one of the other types of depression over time. Probably the most common is to go from the anxious state to eventually to that sluggish, depleted sort of state. But some people will go to that more irritable or agitated state. In particular, some people have that reaction to antidepressants. It's a very common thing to go on an antidepressant and maybe feel better at first, but then over time, over a period of weeks or even months, to become either more irritable or agitated or more sluggish or lethargic. And I think that is often a side effect of the medication that goes unrecognized.